We are pleased and honored to have with us Yael Sherer, who is a documentary filmmaker, social activist, and journalist. And after her father was convicted of sexually abusing her, but only was sentenced to 3 years, she filed a civil lawsuit against him and made a documentary about the process. And this had a nationwide impact in Israel, raising Israel's awareness of sexual exploitation and abuse. So with that, we'd like to welcome Yael Sherer. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. Such dramatic events. I couldn't sleep. I really hope all of you are okay and safe, and that this is gonna end on a positive note, because I was really, I don't know, upset by the images we saw earlier. So hello, and thank you so much for having me. For me, this is very exciting. I don't usually have conversations with audiences in English, but this is a wonderful chance for me. And I'm very thankful for you, for your hospitality and letting me say a few things. I have watched Working Woman, and I'm also very close with the production team. They're friends of mine. But I'm not going to speak directly about the film. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what happened in Israel during the last few years or even a decade, and how the perceptions about rape and sexual harassment changed here. Sexual harassment and rape were very much not really talked about and taboo in many countries, not only in Israel. We're not special here. But this is a society that, alongside everything else culturally that prevents the victims and the survivors from speaking up, this is also a very much religious and conservative society still. And many parts of Israel still are not speaking, and there's no real talk of the subject here still after 10 years. So this is a process. Because this is such a conservative country and society, sometimes looks can be deceiving. Tel Aviv is very bubbly, but this is not the whole country. And 10 years ago, the media wouldn't have on TV, survivors telling their stories and showing their faces, or even telling their name, their full name on TV or on the radio. This was considered something that was very shameful. Because of it, because this was very shameful and nobody really spoke about it openly, there was a notion that sexual assault or rape or even sexual harassment weren't very common. This is something that's very rare, and that is why we never hear of it in this country. Uri, can we have the first polling question? So I have very basic statistics for you to see, and without real talk of the subject, people didn't consider rape as a nationwide problem, or even knew it as a nationwide problem, and they never really considered it something that the government or the media should really address, because it's so rare. only as a phenomena that is special, never had any real coverage. Are there results? Okay. So yeah, most of you were right. Israeli women are no different than the European average, and 1 in 5 would experience rape in their lifetime. The results are surprising and not surprising, but I have prepared another question. If Udi could, how many men experience rape in some point in their life in Israel? Do you know? So this is again something that is hardly ever talked about in Israel, but in other parts of the world as well. This is not a phenomenon that is widely spoken about. The only mention of men being raped in TV or movies or in the media has to do with the jail system. This is a common joke that we hear, that men get raped in jail. This is something that is even comical in some aspects, and nobody really addresses the problem. And the answer is 1 in 36. 1 in 36 men in Israel. And this is not a problem that occurs mainly in the jail system. So this is a common misconception. But these are rape cases. Sexual assault is more common for women. And can you think about how many would experience sexual violence, sexual assault in their lifetime? Give you a little time to answer.
People are still responding. Okay, it looks like most of the people have responded.
Yeah, 1 in 3 women. I see that most of you thought it was 1 in 7. No, it's 1 in 3 women in Israel. And since we have 9 million people here, so 4.5 million women, 1 in 3. So more than 1 million women are going to experience sexual assault at some point of their life. And we didn't even discuss sexual harassment or workplace issues that are even more common. And we didn't even touch or speak about things that happen to children. So this is a common problem, but was never talked about, and nobody spoke of it. In 2012, I released a documentary film that I directed. It's called Dirty Laundry. And I made the film about the legal process that surrounded me suing my own father and seeking compensations. And this was the first time in Israel on TV that a woman that was sexually abused inside her own family had control of the narrative and said her own name and showed her own face. And this was very meaningful for many people. I was the first, but many women and men came after me and started speaking and saying their own name and showing their faces and going on TV or on the radio and telling their own stories. And this started a movement called One of One. It has to do with the statistics about sexual harassment. And one started as a Facebook page where women and men could tell their own story in their own words. And it really changed the media coverage of this issue. It started as something never spoken about and didn't really exist, and became one of the hot topics in the media in Israel for years to come, still is. And it preceded the Me Too movement by a few years. We started operating as an NGO. And after a few years of raising awareness and talking about sexual assault and rape in Israel, for me, it really came down to understanding that telling our own story is very powerful, but it shouldn't be only on Facebook. The people who need to hear our stories are members of the parliament, the Knesset, the government officials, the ministers, and thus the whole system should change. If it's the legal system or the medical system, and the police, what the police ask you and how they question you, what you go through in court. And I went through everything myself. And I started to understand that if you don't go through it, you never understand what it's really like. You can be a psychologist or a doctor or a lawyer or a social worker, and it's fine being a professional, but this experience is unique. This voice should be heard and considered. And I started an advocacy group for survivors of sexual assault and rape. And I started working in the Knesset and alongside the government. And many people said to me, don't start up with politics. Keep it pure, keep it simple, tell your own story. And they thought that the fact that I told this story and I said that I was abused by my own father is very moving. But they didn't really want me to go up to Jerusalem and speak in the Knesset and say that the laws need to be changed here. And for me, I think politics is definitely worth your while. I don't think it's the cleanest profession ever, or even the most moral. That's not what I think. But I think it has the most impact on people's lives. And I did discover about myself when I started this, that I'm a real good politician and that I know how to make people work and make people change their view and their vote. And since I've started, we did a lot of things. I started this group, but many survivors joined in and helped me. And I will just briefly tell you a little bit about what we've accomplished over the last few years. When I wrote these things, the list was so long that I couldn't believe myself that somebody like me, who was an abused child and went through all that I've been through, these court cases, and well, I'm not going to shock you if I tell you that I really suffered as a child, and as a teenager, I was hospitalized. I was mentally ill for many years, and I tried suicide and alcohol and all these things that didn't make me a good candidate to work in the Israeli Knesset. but I am going to tell you, because I think this is something that brings hope to my life, to the lives of the people who work here in this office and do these things. I think it's amazing. So we've stopped the government from destroying rape kits in Israel. A rape kit is a little box that contains sampling materials after a person was raped. In Israel, they didn't keep
All
rape.
right, don't give it away.
No, I'm not. I'm
It's a
not.
poll.
They didn't keep rape. Udi. They didn't keep the rape kits if you didn't immediately file a complaint with police, only for a certain amount of time, and then they destroyed them. So Udi put the question up. This is so funny. Udi put the question up. We changed this policy in 2018, and you can vote if you think you know for how long they kept rape kits in Israel before we stopped this. Do they know?
Okay,
Oh, wow.
Let's see.
okay.
Wow.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, you
Oh my
sort of
God,
tipped
people,
them
you
off.
are amazing.
You tipped
I
them
didn't
off.
think I didn't think this has gone overseas. What we've done, you obviously know about it. This is not a coincidence. You know about it. So they did keep rape kits for only 3 months if the victim didn't file a complaint immediately. This was a real struggle here in Israel because there was a perception that this is that if you didn't file a complaint, then it's not going to happen. And even though you have a right to file complaints later, even after up to 7 and 10 years, depending on the crime, then you're probably not going to do it. And the government and the state shouldn't keep these things. It's miyutar. It's not important enough to keep. These are not cases worth pursuing later, which was such a backwards thinking, kind of even misogynistic view of these evidence of rape cases. What do you mean it's not going to happen and the country's not going to pursue it? Such a weird kind of thinking for our time. But 10 years ago, this was common to say, well, if she didn't file a complaint immediately, she's not going to do it ever. She's not, we don't believe that she's going to do anything. So now they don't destroy rape kits anymore. This was a real struggle, and somebody that gave us a lot of support was President Ruby Rivlin, who was part of this struggle, and his support was very meaningful. For the president to say, I don't think this is okay, was a real turning point in this campaign. We also didn't have emergency care for victims of rape and sexual assault in the hospitals. The government had 5 when I just started working on this issue, and later started closing, actually not giving out emergency hospital care for the victims. This was outrageous, and I really thought that even faraway places like Eilat and the north should have emergency care for victims of sexual assault and rape. Over the last few years, we had a real public campaign to convince the government to open more of these units inside the hospitals. So now we are up to 7. 2 of them were opened over the last 3 months after 7 years and 6 years of struggle. And we also had the government issue 5 million shekels to open 5 more units. So this is going to be a nationwide geographical spread of this, something that should be in every hospital, but this is a struggle to bring to remote places. We also worked on a law that prevented people who were convicted of sexual assault, rape, and sexual crimes from changing their name. This was very common in Israel, especially amongst people who were child molesters. And they changed their names, and in many cases returned to work, started to work again with children after they changed their name. We don't have sexual offenders register. So they changed their names and started working again somewhere else. So we wrote a law that prevents this. They cannot change their names now unless they have a special permit, and they have to show that they are not dangerous. And I don't think, since we had this law, that even one child molester was given a permit, but we can check. And just recently we wrote a law that said that killers and sexual offenders cannot be the guardian of their children. Not in general killers that killed somebody else, but people who killed one of their children cannot be a guardian of the other children, and people who murdered their spouse cannot be the legal guardian of the remaining children. Also, if you rape or if you rape your child, you cannot be your child's guardian. And this was a real struggle. You can't believe how hard this was to convince the government of. This specific law had a lot of resistance from the government, because Israel is such a parent-oriented country, and for people to be a parent is a strong birthright here. In ways that are not the same in other countries. Certainly not in Europe, but here parenthood is very important. It's almost more important than the child. And in many cases, the government have said that this is better for the offender, because if you take the guardianship away from the offender, this is going to prevent the offender from ever having a normal life, because he's not the guardian of the children. And for us, this was a no-brainer. You cannot be the person who makes decisions for children you have raped. You didn't prove yourself a parent that's worth your opinion about their education and their lives. You didn't make good choices before. So for us, this was a no-brainer, but this was a real war with the government, and just recently started off. So I'm really hoping that this is just the beginning for us. Certainly for me, it's just the beginning. We have a long way ahead of us. And I think that raising awareness is so important. It's so important. But once we've done this, we have to take the power that all this pain needs to be worth something. It needs to promote change. what we say, for me personally, saying that my name is Yael Sherer and my father sexually abused me is powerful. I want to use this power to change this country. And now that more and more people are joining me, I think we are really taking steps forward in not only recognizing this phenomena, but doing real things, doing something about it, really fighting back against it. And so this is it. And I really thank you for letting me be a guest here. And Udi, do we have questions? I'll be very happy to answer them.
Right. Yes, I invite you at this point to either just take yourself off of mute and speak up or wait. I can't see all the participants. So if you could take yourself off of mute and just speak up, I invite you to ask your questions.
I'll be very happy to answer you.
How has the rabbinic community responded to your work?
Oh, it depends what kind of community. Certainly for the Haredi community, it's been an amazing change. I'm working with some Haredi organizations. For them, this has been a huge leap forward, even acknowledging that this is something that exists. I'm not going to pretend that this is something that is commonly talked about, and certainly not in their media. But it's not called sexual abuse or rape. It's not called that. They have their own words. They call a lot of the education about it muganut, being safe. And that allowed them to have a conversation without compromising about what they considered tsanua. And so having words that mean it but don't say it was a wonderful step for them. So I'm not resenting the fact that they don't talk about rape, because they do, but in other words, and this has been a giant leap forward. In other communities, certainly a change in the language and the way that our communities, our synagogues treat this within our own synagogues now, and certainly in mine. And I spoke to members of my personal community about my experience. We had talks about it. There's now a group of reformed Rabbanim and Rabbaniot that are working on these issues with a Jewish approach. And I'm very much connected to them as well and working with them. And for many victims, this has been something that was really a godsend, because it allowed them within their own religion to feel differently about their experience, not to feel shame or guilt. And I know that now we have with this group, ceremonies, rituals, prayers, mikveh for the victims, and it brings real healing for certain people that need it and want it and crave it. And this never was talked about, so it didn't really have a body of work in the Jewish community here.
Thank you.
I think I answered your question.
Yes.
Very good.
Any other questions? Or questions about the film as well, of Yael's perspective of the film?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, first of all, I see on Google that you were born in Kochav Yair, Tzur Igal. Tzur Igal or Kochav Yair? It's the same thing?
Kochav Yair, before they went and married each other. There was no Tzur Igal when I was young.
Okay, because I was in Kibbutz Eyal. You would know where it is.
Yeah, neighbor. Hello, neighbor.
Long time.
We could walk to your kibbutz.
There you
were
go.
so close.
I wanted to know if the statistic that you gave included the religious community or the Arabic community in Israel.
The statistics I
kibbutzim.
gave is, I'm just going to say it like this. I'm going to be very honest about this statistic. To quantify and measure rape is an enigma. The researchers don't know how to do it. So they estimate, because you can't really ask the community, not even my community, not even in my building, certainly not in Haredi communities or in Arab communities or in very religious Druze communities. It doesn't matter. People are not reporting rape. They don't complain about rape. Recently, the government started asking in statistic polling of the population, where they count how many people bought a car, how many people. So they asked people in a survey. So they started asking in the survey of the government, were you ever sexually harassed? And this was presented in the parliament, and the government statistics is that 100,000 people in Israel experienced sexual harassment. And that's it. Because this is the amount of people that said yes to the government poll. So this is really an estimation. And because we have a certain amount of complaints to the police and certain amount of people arriving at the hospitals, we can measure sort of. And since this is the statistics in Europe as well, so we estimate that we're really close to what's happening in the world. And Europe is now, what, 20 countries? So we see that we're kind of close to the average here. If it's really 1 of 5 women or 1 of 3, many organizations now say that it's more than that, since people tend not to admit that they were raped. So you can't really poll rape as did you experience rape, because women, if they didn't fight back, tend to think this was just unwanted sex. What is unwanted sex? So it depends what kind of, again, with Haredi communities and Muganut, how do you name something that people have a tendency not to name? So this is about the statistics. For me, honestly, it doesn't matter. I don't care if it's 1 of 6 or now the estimations are close to 1 in 4, and I don't care. For me, it's not about statistics. It's about the people. There are many of them, and they need proper care, and the government needs to address this issue and prevent it. So it doesn't really matter if it's 1 of 5 or 1 of 4, for me.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. Were you satisfied with the ending of the film? Because the protagonist in the film got her satisfaction, how she handled it, but that's not the way you would like to see things handled.
I don't know if it's not the way I want to see things handled. I'm friends with many of the staff in the production and the director and producer, And I didn't have a problem with the ending
No?
because I see how the justice system here works. It's not always a good outcome. You can be as right as you can be and still not get justice. And the cases are being closed and you're sent home. And the government says, we believe you, but we're not going to do much about it. And I think in this situation shown in the film, she didn't do the right thing. She did the smart thing. So I don't know if it's textbook, but I think we need to be, we need to understand the politics here between a citizen and the justice system, and a man and a woman, and somebody who's strong and has money and power, and somebody who obviously doesn't. And I think the ending for me was inspirational. I like the ending. I think it's smart. It's more close to real life solutions.
It was a good ending. No
was a
question
good
about it.
The woman was especially impressive, but one thing that troubled me was how her husband reacted to her. And that was very troubling to me.
Still a very conservative society here. I know it doesn't seem that way when you're on the beach in Tel Aviv with a bikini, but still relationships between men and women in Israel are not equal. They're not. And with all this empowerment and a woman can do anything she wants. Of course she can do anything she wants, just as long as she does it after she has 3 children, feeds them nutritious, wonderful food that she cooked herself, teaches them private lessons, and and studies for her 2nd degree at night. And she can do everything. Of course, she needs to take the child out of kindergarten every day. Otherwise, the child will have problems and you're responsible. But otherwise, do whatever you like. The world is full of opportunities for you, modern woman, and you can do whatever you want at work. And if you are not home every day at 5, you're bad. So Israel is kind of I don't know, sometimes it's a society with split personalities here. Women are very much claiming to be empowered, and right after they finish their little speech about all the things that they can do and how many opportunities they have, they run home because their husband is going to ask them where they've been. So what can you do?
Marlene, did you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to know if this genre of movies is opening up the national conversation, or is it just the 1 or 2 films and they're shuffled away?
Well, this film had a lot of audience here in Israel, which is nice, and a lot of people saw it. And but no, not many films about this issue still. And I know this because I'm still sometimes showing my film Dirty Laundry, and this has been almost 10 years since Dirty Laundry was released, and people are still asking me to show it because there aren't many films about this still. So no, not a lot of films about this issue. A lot of talk, not a lot of films.
Gittel, you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the end of the film was, as far as I'm concerned, satisfying for me, for the woman. It was a good thing. But it leaves the man perfectly ready to commit this crime all over again. There is nothing done. I don't know if his wife was suspicious of something or not. She may have been. She may know something about him. But it's certainly, while the woman walked away in good place for herself, she got what she needed. She certainly wasn't doing anything to protect the next person that came into her position.
How could she? It's very
Well,
realistic.
that's what I'm saying. What can be done? Because if you can't just take it through, there has to be something. Otherwise, the man, in this case, the man, or in another case, it could be the woman, could continue to do the same kind of crime over and over and over again.
You're right. We have started when I was head of 101, and when I worked on these issues, we understood what you're saying now. This is something is wrong with this method. You can't go to the government because they can't do anything. The police is going to close the case, and yet he's going to do it again. And we had serial rapists here and serial attackers here for many years that people knew about, and nobody did anything. So we've started an online register for women and men where they could file an online report. And if we had a few reports about the same person, we could let these people know without interfering with police work, because these people didn't talk to each other. They didn't know each other. So this was not compromised, the investigation. We spoke to them and told them that somebody else also experienced the same thing. And then we could organize all the victims together, but not together, to go to the police and file reports that they knew had somebody else backing their report by their own report.
Corroboration.
Wow.
Collaboration.
Corroboration.
Corroboration with an R, corroboration.
We started this, and very soon after we started it, we had quite a few nationwide successes with, I don't know if you know the story of Alon Castiel, who was a young nightlife DJ and had clubs and was from a very rich family. Castiel here is poof. And he had a nasty habit of drugging very young women, and he did it dozens of times. Tens of women started putting his name in this register. I mean, not 2 women, not 3 men, 3 women. I mean, tons. I mean, he raped half of Tel Aviv in his clubs. He was like, I mean, you're young, you look good, you're filthy rich. Why do you need to do this? You're a pervert. And the police did nothing about it, and everybody knew. And we started speaking to the victims, and they went to the police, and eventually 8 of them filed complaints, and 4 charges were made. And this is just one story. The second one is Moshe Ivgi, an actor, very famous. And also, I think 22 women reported Moshe Ivgi to this online register, and also was convicted, and 2 files were made against him and other people. But there were legal issues with this system, and there was a decision to close this register down, and I'm now trying to open it again with the government, not as something that the public does, as something that the government will do herself. And this is now in debate with the Justice Minister. I'm hoping that maybe in a year or 2, I can be your guest again and tell you that this is really happening. I'm certainly working on it, because I understand what you understood, that there's no real way to stop them. They're just going to do it again. And we need to stop them as a society. It's not the responsibility of one woman to stop a sex offender. We need, as a society, as a government, to have a system that stops these people, because they're just going to do it again.
Thank you. Like 1 or 2 more questions, and then I think we'll,
Oh, I have a question.
okay. Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, I just wanted to first of all say yashar on all of what you've done to recover from your trauma. Secondly, I'm a clinical psychologist who has been treating victims of sexual abuse as well as sex offenders for 50 years. I was wondering whether there is any mandate for mental health treatment by for sex offenders in Israel.
No. Sorry for the short answer.
No, I understand. I'm just saying that is mandated here in the United States. There are perpetrators who become mentioned. Not all that many, but some certainly do.
All right, we have a question here.
For me, hi, I had 2 questions. I also wanted to thank you for your courage, everything you've done. I was very moved by an interview I saw with you on Israeli TV. And I
which
just,
one?
That was a half-hour one.
hour.
I didn't know the name of the program.
It was years ago. So how can we see your documentary is
Yeah.
one
Is
question.
it available to stream?
Second question.
It's not available to stream at the moment because of copyright issues. I don't own all the rights. I own part of the rights. So in order for me to show it, I need to have consent from my partners. So it's you can't stream it. That's the answer. Every time I show it, I need to have consent, but it's fine. I'm happy to have partners. They helped me a lot. I couldn't have done it without them. And when I started with the idea of making a film, there was no streaming services. It was a long time ago, so I didn't think of this option. So this is what happened.
Okay, your other question.
Well, I had some more questions. I'm also a clinical psychologist. I'm wondering if you can comment briefly on your experiences in therapy as a way of healing for you.
How much time do you have?
Not a lot, not a lot. We're near the end.
Because clearly you've done
Wow. Name a method. Let's play bingo. Wow, I've experienced a lot of methods and people and all kinds of. I took drugs and I went to retreats and I don't know. What really worked for me is myself and not other people giving me answers or advice. I'm not opposed to therapy. I just think it's not one suit that fits everybody. I think it needs to be more flexible. And it's very rigid. And people try to do the exact same things that they've done 20 years ago when they studied. And I don't think there's a lot of or enough learning in Israel in this aspect. And we just now have conventions and the school for psychologists, the academy has started to really talk about what it means to treat people with PTSD and complex PTSD. And I mean, it just now started. So I really experienced a lot of people that didn't really know what to do with me and guessed.
Mm.
And sometimes their guesses were good guesses, and sometimes their guesses were, So it was a learning experience for both sides.
Okay.
So what's your next issue?
What's my
Your next
My
issue.
what?
Your next issue. What issue are you working on next?
These emergency care units that the government has issued 5 million shekels to open, we still need to see that the government really opens them. We do want the guardianship laws extended, because now they only have rape in them if the parent raped the child, and not other offenses that are not sexually abused the child in other ways. So even if you are convicted in pimping your child, you will still be a guardian. So we are working in the next Knesset, we will try and extend to other sexual offenses, which is kind of a nasty issue, but we need to do it. It needs to be done. It's not logical that somebody that didn't rape their child but did other things is going to be a parent and a guardian, and not even didn't rape their child but was not convicted of raping their child because the state had issues with the prosecution, so they gave it a lesser sentence. So he raped the child but was not convicted of raping the child because he admitted to other offenses, so he will still be guardian. So this is going to be a real issue for us for the next, I estimate, at least 2.5 years for legislating all these things.
Thank you.
Yael, do you want to talk about the lobby?
So this is us, the advocacy group. We called Survivors of Sexual Violence Advocacy Group, and in Hebrew, Halobi Lemilchama Be'alimut Minit.
Which translates literally to the lobby for war on sexual violence.
Yeah, people often say to me, why war? War. This is a war. This is not a struggle. I don't like to say this is the struggle against, this is not struggling, this is a war. And this is us. You can click on the website and see. Unfortunately, it's not in English quite yet. We are working on it, so it's in Hebrew. And it has all the useful information about sexual assault and rape, and what are your rights and what you can and cannot do, what kind of laws we're working on and with who. We are a very, wow, I don't know how to translate, shakuf. We tell our public, transparent, that's the word. We are a transparent organization. So every week we tell our followers what we've done and with who. There's the famous whiteboard here. You can see it. You can see the whiteboard. So it actually tells you every week, it goes on the whiteboard, it goes on social media, what's on the board. And you can see who we've met from parliament or the ministers. And we meet with anybody who would meet us. It doesn't matter if it's Chiloni or Dati, or if it's Aravi, Yehudi, right wing, left wing. We meet with everybody. Everybody goes on the board. And this has become a real tool for us because members of parliament and ministers want to be on the board. They want to be on the board. Sorry. And so you can follow us on social media, again, sorry, in Hebrew and sometimes in Arabic, because we have Arab volunteers and they translate. So in Hebrew and in Arabic, what we do every week, who we meet, what kind of legislation we're pushing for, the votes in the parliament, and all the other useful information. We don't accept any funds from the government as a principle. We are not, we don't believe that you can really work to change policy if if somebody that makes the policy pays you. So we never accept any governmental funds. This is all funded by the public.
To that end, if you are, I hate to hit at the end of each discussion with a fundraising pitch, but if you are inclined to support this, I'm pushing to chat a link where you can go to donate. Again, sadly, it's mostly in Hebrew, but you can make online donations. If you donate 20 shekels, that's $6. So 50 shekels is about $15 if you are inclined. And if you, there are 3 dots to the right, lower right corner of the chat window where you can kind of save this to your computer, this link, or email me
Just make
afterwards.
sure there are 2 buttons there, and you can make it a continuing donation, so every month or one time. So make sure that you choose the right option.
Yeah, they're very Israeli. They default to monthly renewable, so you have to kind of.
And proud of it, and proud of it. We like continuous support.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Yael Sherer. It's 4 a.m. your time, so we will let you catch up on your sleep.
No, I don't think I'm gonna sleep. I think I'm gonna follow your news now. I hope you'll
Oh
have
my God. Yeah, we're not going to sleep.
Pray for us.
a good outcome and a peaceful few days ahead.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very
Thank you
much.
so
Thank
Yeah.
you.